Hello, I'm Carla Zuill, and welcome to the viewing of Dark Cloud, Unity is Strength, a video which was produced as a result of spoken word delivered in June by Eugene Dean of Bermuda Freedom Alliance as he appeared on The Outlet on radio station Vibe 103. Eugene was speaking to the listening audience about how he felt the community was being affected by the divisiveness which has culminated since the pandemic hit Bermuda shores. Let's take a moment to watch the video and then join me in a few moments as I speak to Eugene about why the video was created and, most importantly, how the residents of Bermuda can unite going forward instead of falling further apart.
These are very dark times in Bermuda. The sun may be shining outside, but there's a really ominous cloud looming over the country, and who feels it knows it. And we feel it, and we know there are a lot of people who feel it as well. We're experiencing a pandemic that should to have led to loud cries for us to come together, because unity is strength. Instead, it's being used to divide us, divide families, divide friends, divide work colleagues. It's literally tearing us apart. A recovery process fit for the skill and experience of our health professionals. Instead, it's been run by politicians and public health officials who have consciously or unconsciously spread fear and uncertainty all around the world. All of a sudden, countries like the United States have become our moral compass, leading the way with targeted ad campaigns, PR stunts, and appearances made by formerly well-respected public figures, key influencers, paid actors, even doctors and physicians who have been used to coerce our people. Prize giveaways, raffles, vouchers, money, travel, hotel stays, even herb has been used as an incentive. And the threat of lockdowns coupled with mandates that pose a direct threat to our freedoms, our liberties, and our livelihoods have been used to whip us into submission until we follow the very narrow guidance being handed down to countries all around the world. Despite the absence of morality, clear breaches in ethics, and the creation of conditions that make informed consent all but impossible, anyone who questions anything or anyone who shares views other than the status quo narrative finds themselves censored, targeted, and attacked by governments and the media with the intent to damage their credibility. Where is the openness and objectivity? Where are the conversations? Where is the collaboration? And where is the data and rationale to support our current approach? It's very difficult to make sense out of any of this. And for anyone who is really analyzing the data, it just doesn't add up. I'm really hoping that we can pull out of this. It's almost like a spell has been cast over our country. This is not a situation that we should be allowing to divide us. We have to rise above this. We're fighting each other when we're not even each other's enemies. We've misplaced, right, our energies on targets that are not real. We're here to support each other, and even those of us who have shown the courage to speak publicly, we are here in an effort to bring us together. Our efforts, rather than to condemn, are to encourage. We need more conversation. We need more collaboration. Unity is strength. And only through listening and understanding can we create the conditions for respect. And the more we respect each other, the more we will learn, the more we grow, and the better the situation will be for everyone. So with that, I would like to encourage all the listeners to really take that to heart. We can all find ourselves falling prey to external forces. Let's reclaim our power and let's center and focus our intent and make sure that it's all positive. Let's lead with love. Let's be love. Let's be peace. Let's be unity. That's real strength. Give thanks.
Now that we've watched the video, let's take a moment to speak to the man behind the video. Eugene, welcome. How are you?
Greetings, Carla. I'm good. Give thanks. A pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to be here. Listen, I want to jump right in. One of the quotes, like towards the beginning, the sun may be shining outside, but there's a really ominous cloud looming over the country, and who feels it knows it. And we feel it, and we know there are a lot of people who feel it as well. A powerful statement. Besides the economic hardships many have endured over the last 18 months, what do you consider the ominous cloud?
Well, I would first and foremost say it's the stress and the fear that people have been put under as a result of the way that the pandemic has been measured, has been, I guess, worked on. What I also talk about is the fact that a lot of people have felt ostracized. They've been felt like pushed outside of the community. They haven't felt valued. People have been left without a voice.
Who are they?
Well, it's anyone who has a view other than the status quo narrative, and that's what it says in there. So it's as if the mandates that are being pushed, the approach that's being taken, everyone's just meant to just receive it and follow suit without questioning anything. And anyone who questions anything is just criticized. And not even just criticized, but like disregarded. So it's like, you must be crazy if you're questioning things. Like, you know what I mean? So, and that's what's created a scenario in the community. So what I would say in terms of the dark cloud is like, you have all this social pressure. So you have people who have been friends for years, and all of a sudden, like, those friendships are being challenged. You have people who are concerned about being able to keep their jobs. You have people, families who are concerned about their children being able to go to school, you know?
But I have to be devil's advocate, because for every statement you've just made, it's someone on the other side of that who feels that those who don't believe that, for example, there's a pandemic, or that I know it's a lot of discussion around vaccination versus non-vaccination, that people feel that if they don't feel like those who oppose that, then they're being ostracized. I see it on both sides. So where is that balance as such?
Well, the difference is that, you know, people who are feeling comfortable with the way things are being handled, they're fine. You know, they're not being punished. You know, they're not being singled out. They're not being told that they're crazy or they're anti-vaxxers or, you know, they're conspiracy theorists and things of that nature. They're not being told any of that. And so what's happened now is you have a setup that if you follow suit with the way things are being laid out, then it's like you're embraced as being like a part of the community. And if you're not, then you're being singled out and punished. So all the mandates that are being put in place are being put in place to punish people who don't decide to follow the way. And so, and this is the thing, Carla, right? There's no problem with people who wish to take the jab. It's not really about that. I'm not really focused on whether people want to take the jab or don't want to take the jab. The thing is that governments, or our government in particular, is saying that everybody has a choice. And then on the other side of it, you know, at every step, they are putting things in place that punish you for not making the choice that they want you to make.
So you keep saying punishment. Some would say, so I'm assuming you mean, for example, the initially implemented quarantine hotel that people had to pay for if they weren't vaccinated, right? Because what are you defining? Because some people are listening to you right now and saying, what's a punishment? What are you considering a punishment? The vaccination hotel, for example, is that what you would call quarantine hotel? Is that what you?
Well, that's one of the things. But even before we got there, you know, so say you have a job, and all of a sudden now your job is speaking to you in language which suggests that, you know, if you don't get the jab, you know, your employment is at risk. So all of a sudden now, you were told that you had a choice in terms of how you wanted to handle your personal health as it related to the pandemic. But now you're getting pressure from your job that suggests now your livelihood is at risk. Now you have to think about how you take care of your family and things of that nature. Whereas somebody on the other side of the equation who chooses to get the jab, they're not under that type of pressure.
But 6 one way, half a dozen the other, because wouldn't some say that it's not punishment, but it's consequence? So if you choose not to get the jab, there will be consequence with that, i.e. the quarantine hotel, i.e. Like some people are saying about the safe key, for example. One can't ignore that people have died all over the world. You can't ignore that. So some people would say that those who may feel that, let's just say, I've been vaccinated. I feel it's a choice, but I also feel that if I choose not to get it, there are consequences. So why is it being viewed as punishment?
Well, it's being used as punishment because the other thing that we talked about in the video is that it's a very narrow path. You know, so what's happening is that you have people around the world, or let's just take Bermuda. We have people with all sorts of skill sets, you know, and you have health professionals. People approach their health in different ways. There are some people who take a more medical approach and go to medical doctors. There are other people who go to holistic therapists. There are other people who go to herbalists and things of that nature. But what's being said in this scenario is that none of the other options are valid. The only way that we can get through this pandemic is through everybody taking the jab. So say you live your whole life in a way that hasn't gone down a medical path. Say you're somebody who's, right, had close family members or personal experience with being vaccine injured. But now you're told that, you know, either you take this jab or you have consequences. You know what I mean? So that's where the challenges start to come into place. And the other thing is that nobody's answering the real questions or concerns that come out of the community. So going back to your opening question about what is the dark cloud, the dark cloud is as a result of all the stress and anxiety that's come under the community because it's been a very closed shop. You have people in authority making decisions and not including anyone else in the conversation. So now you have very experienced health professionals, people who have been, I guess, at the top of the profession all their life, very credible, well respected, who don't agree with the way that the government is doing things. And even those people are being left out of the conversation.
But then how do you placate that, for example, when there are millions of people worldwide who have died? And so for some people, take the government narrative out of it, you turn on the news and you're seeing these numbers going up and up and up. How can people not be afraid?
Well, that's the other concern, is because the media has been very complicit in this situation. They have played a major role in, they are the eyes and ears for people. And people have depended on and trusted the media for actually letting them know what's going on in our country and what's going on around the world. And the media, as have governments have been telling one side of the story. It's been a very narrow approach. So, for example, we're now a good year and a half or more into the pandemic, right? All the emphasis, details are being told about deaths. Deaths were up on TVs like numbers in the stock market, right? Running on a day-to-day basis. Now, you have adverse effects from COVID-19 vaccines, reports of adverse effects that exceed the total number of adverse effects from all vaccines in history. But you don't see that coming up on TV because they're not telling you that on the news. So this is where the challenge comes from. So when you're someone who's aware of that reality, right, and you're looking at the news and you see the injustice and you see the fear in people's eyes, even people very close to you, and they're very afraid, and they're feeling like getting the jab is the only solution, and you know otherwise, but you realize that governments and the media are not telling the whole story, it's very stressful. It's very difficult.
So needless to ask, what are your thoughts on, and you mentioned it in the video, incentives, like, you know, you see countries saying, you see Bermuda saying at this point, I think because of the Delta variant, there has to be 87.5% of the population vaccinated. I know of people who have received grocery vouchers or what have you if they get vaccinated. Needless to ask, what's your view on that?
It's unethical. It's extremely unethical. You know, how you, whenever in history, have you seen incentives given to take a pharmaceutical treatment? Like ever. You know, why weren't we given incentives for weight loss? Why weren't we given incentives for healthy living? Why weren't we given incentives for exercise? These are, and that's the other thing. You have this hammer approach for getting people to take what's an experimental, right, treatment. And the pharmaceutical companies are telling you it's experimental. It's just that the authorities are not telling you that. You know, so that's the other thing that's causing the stress. So
wouldn't some say that this is the first time in men's living history that the world is experiencing a pandemic? So some would say, you know, because you talk about data as well, right? We're all navigating these waters for the first time.
Right.
How do we know that these are realistic numbers or inflated numbers, or, you know, in Bermuda we see the increased number of positives, but when you look at the whole picture, it's maybe 1% of the population, right? But people see 53, 35. How is there a balance? How do we get people to understand that just because numbers are rising, when you look at the whole population, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's time to panic?
Well, if governments, authorities, and the media would actually tell people the whole story, then you would have a lot of fear. So another concern is that there seems to be an effort, a concerted effort, to amp the fear up and to keep the fear up, rather than an effort to actually bring calm to the community. So for example, you enter into what you're told is a global pandemic. Everyone's concerned. Fine. Then you find out that it's not really as bad as you thought it was. But you don't say that. So today, you still have people acting like we're in the early months of last year when we didn't know anything. But we do know a lot. There have been tons of studies that have been taken for a lot of things. There were people. We were concerned about that this virus can live on surfaces. But then there were studies done right away to show that it doesn't. But that's not being shared. So you still have people today who are very much afraid because they think they're going to catch a virus by touching a doorknob or a table or something. But it's just not true. So the question then becomes, why isn't the media telling the whole story? And why do we have censorship? Why do you have a situation where Facebook had groups with over 60,000 people reporting adverse effects, and they deleted the group? If you say anything on social media that contradicts to the narrative that is being run by governments and authorities around the world, you get deleted. And if you're a medical professional or professional of any type, you get shut down. It's unprecedented. I know I've personally never seen anything where so many medical professionals are coming out and speaking against something. Why are medical professionals having to go on other platforms other than YouTube and Facebook and things of that nature just in order to ensure that their message is not deleted? This is all unprecedented.
Right. So how does the narrative change? Because someone could be listening to us having this conversation right now. They've lost a loved one or loved ones to COVID, and say, how can he say that this is, not a farce, but it's not as critical as it may seem? How do you?
Well, no, my comments about the pandemic being not as I guess challenging as we initially thought it would be is nothing to do with my personal view. That's just to do with the facts. That's just a reality, and that in no way means that I'm insensitive towards anyone who's lost anyone. My efforts are actually to help us to build a stronger position in terms of being able to deal with that, because the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we really leverage the collective skill and expertise from people all around the world. And at the moment we're not doing that. What has been happening is that people are being cherry-picked. People who support the narratives that governments are delivering, those are the people that are being cherry-picked. Those are the people who have been given a voice. And I'll say, for example, Carla, I've been someone who's been involved in the community my entire adult life.
Right.
I'm very familiar with the media. The media knows me, right? I'm very familiar with releasing things to the media. And every time I release things to the media, my stories get run. Whether it's about sports, whether it's about health, whether it's about culture, entertainment, whatever it is. Environment, people are well familiar with that. In this particular circumstance, I have had several media releases, including the official release of this video, that has been sent to all the media in the island, and it's radio silence. No one reports it.
And you just think it's because it doesn't fit with the narrative that mainstream media has put out there?
For whatever reason, everyone is afraid. And it's not just afraid of the virus. People are afraid to say anything contrary to what the government is saying. Meanwhile, anyone who supports the narrative of fear-mongering, and heightened pressure and stress and coercion is given free time on the air.
So how can one in the community who may want to at least explore, right, how can they do so?
Well, my first suggestion is, I know early out in the pandemic, I personally started to reach out to health professionals around the island. And in reaching out, I found that there were several health professionals who weren't being given voice. Actually, they weren't being listened to by several of their colleagues. They weren't being given voice by the media. And so we created a program called Beyond the Pandemic. And that program has 10 episodes already with health professionals and a few media conferences where they're answering questions from the community. So if you want to hear what local health professionals and some international have to say, their honest views, their honest experience, their stories, you can go to beyondthepandemic.tv and you can watch the episodes. Unfortunately, there are very few other places that you can go locally at least to be able to find information of that nature, because everyone else who comes on mainstream media has been handpicked, to specifically support the government's narrative,
So question, have you come across people in the community who wish that there was, or wish that they could be vocal, or, silent supporters? Why are they afraid? I know you said that they may be afraid of repercussions, but if you believe in what you believe in, shouldn't you be able to stand up and say that?
Well, I really wish there were more people that had the courage, and I sympathize. To be honest with you, Carla, I have been very vocal around this topic, not necessarily for myself personally, because I personally know where I stand, and I feel comfortable living my life from that perspective. I speak for what I call the silent majority, the people who suffer quietly because they don't feel they have a voice, who are afraid because they feel that their livelihood, their reputation, their family is at risk if they so decide to speak honestly about what their experiences has been and how they feel. And that's a very challenging situation, and it really hurts my heart. And in many regards, that's what inspired me to speak on the radio in the way that I did that day, because I'm just thinking about all the people who don't have a voice, the people who don't have the confidence to just speak out about how they really feel, and who are left suffering silently. It's really sad and unnecessary.
So I wanted to go into another quote. You said, this is not a situation that we should be allowing to divide us. We have to rise above this. We're fighting each other when we're not even each other's enemies. We've misplaced our energies on targets that are not real. So what I wanted to ask you is, well, what is the true target, first of all? Because let's be for real, the venom is coming from both sides of the argument as such.
Well, this is the thing, and this is what we are talking about, and what I said about the targets. So what's happened is the situation has us fighting each other, when we're really supposed to be working together to strengthen our position to move beyond the pandemic. That's really it. So how do we deal with the presence of this virus in our community, right? And that's only gonna happen if we really work together. So let's take the target off each other, because we're not each other's enemies.
Right.
Let's recognize what's most important for us in life. What is most important to us? And when we think about it, is our relationships. Our relationship with ourselves. Where do we stand? Are we being true to ourselves first? Right? Let's think about those who are close to us, our loved ones, our families, our friends, our work colleagues, and then let's think about our communities. So this is something that we should be uniting around, that we should be working together on. We should have teams that are focused on dealing with different things, because as a result of this pandemic, you not only have health issues or health concerns, there's been economic fallout, there's been social fallout, you know. We need to be addressing all those things, and only
Who should be taking the
working
charge?
together can be. Well, what's happened is that it's become clear all around the world that governments are steadfast in their position. It appears, or as thus far, regardless of what has happened, governments have remained committed to the path that they have taken. Therefore, the onus becomes on us as people. We have to look at each other and say, okay, is this little disagreement that we're having more important than our relationship? Is this disagreement more important than our communities, right? Or what's in the best interest of our country, right? And if we recognize that there's more value in those relationships than in the things that we're arguing about, let's put those arguments aside and let's find a way to work together to do what's going to be the best interest of our country and its people. That's the simple message. And that is the critical thing that we need to find a way to rise above. The emotion of it can drive us to fight. And we all know what it's like when we get entrenched in the emotion, in the moment. Let's step back from that, the immediacy of the divisiveness, and look at the big picture. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to. We individually have to make decisions that rather than divide, we're going to unite. That rather than fight, we're going to love. And when we make those choices, right, we can inspire others to do the same. And that's the only way that we're going to move forward.
Gene, thanks for taking this time to explain your thoughts and your feelings. And I hope that the public really do appreciate what you've said, the video, and I hope that it resonates with them. Thank you for tuning into this program, and if you missed it, just look for it on YouTube. Dark Cloud, Unity is Strength. I've been your host, Carla Zuill. Thanks for joining.